Hi, I'm just going to do a short presentation on variables and array and give you a few tips and tricks that will help you as you work with JavaScript. Creating variables. There's just basically one way to create a variable, and that's to use the var keyword and then a space and then the name of the variable. And most variables are all done lowercase. If you use camel case, it'll be easier to read, and that's where you capitalize the first character of each new word. Notice on the first line the double slash, that's a comment, so that describes what that variable is going to do. Now there's two pieces to declaring a variable or of creating a variable. The first is a declaration, and that's basically just setting it up in the computer's memory, in the browser's memory. And on this slide, I'm showing the declaration is outlined in red. So we declare a variable named heading, and we declare a variable named count. Now, as those lines are, there's nothing inside that memory. They're just empty variables. So we also want to initialize the variables, and that's what I have outlined in purple. And you can see that we've assigned the string, and you know it's a string because it's double quotes around it. The words JavaScript rocks is being assigned to the variable heading. And we're basically taking the words JavaScript rocks and we're dumping it into the bucket called heading. So anytime we want to know what's in the word heading, we would just, our JavaScript will dump out whatever in that bucket. We also initialize the variable count by assigning the number 345 to the variable. And you can see what most people call an equal sign. That's our assignment operator. So we're basically taking what's on the right side of the assignment operator and we're putting it into the bucket on the left side. Also notice each of these lines ends in a semicolon. Now there's many different types of variables, and when you assign them values or strings, JavaScript automatically takes care of this for you. But you have to be aware of this because sometimes you'll get information from the user that will always be strings, and you want to change that into an integer or a number. So here's the different kinds. They're basically different shapes of containers. There's numbers, Boolean, which is either true or false. We have strings, which are made up of a series of characters, and they always have double quotes around them. And then there's objects such as math objects, data objects, and array objects, and you'll learn those later on in this course. Now, if you just declare a variable, which were the red lines in the previous slide, or in this example, var my test, it will be null or empty. There's no values in that spot in memory. And if you haven't declared a variable yet, JavaScript will return the word undefined. That means it hasn't been declared yet. One of the biggest questions that comes up the most often when working with JavaScript, specifically when you're getting information from a form, a web form from the user, is how to convert the strings to numbers. Let's say you had a form and you asked a person's name and their age, and you want to add their age to find out how old they're going to be in 10 years, or you want to do some calculations and you ask what year they were born, and you want to calculate if they're the legal age or not. So there's some built-in functions you can use. One is called parseInt, and one is called parseFloat, and these will convert strings to numbers. The int, an integer, is a whole number without any decimal points, so that would be like age, pages in a book. Anytime you have a whole number. A floating number is a number that has a decimal point, so that would be like prices, or any kind of percentage would all come out to a float type of number. You can also use the function NaN, which stands for not a number, and you can use that to test if something that a person has input is a number or not. So let's say you ask for a year and somebody types out the whole year as words. You could use not a number to test that out. Or they might even type in ONE for one when they could have typed in a one number. Another very valuable function is finding out how long some input is. So you can take any string variable, or really basically any variable, and if you put .length on the end of it, JavaScript will return how long it is. And when you learn about looping and making decisions with JavaScript, this becomes really valuable because, for instance, you could ask a user how many times they want to do something, or figure out how many items are in an array, and then you would loop through that many times. Every time the program runs, that number might change, so all you have to use is the .length function to find out what that is. Now when you use parse int, which you will be using a lot, there's a gotcha. And that has to do with different numbering systems. It gets fairly involved, but basically parse int always checks the number base before converting. Now, if you do a sample program and you use parse int quote 09 quote, it will come out a different number. I first discovered this when I had a series of folders that I was changing the numbers of, and it came out real screwy. And what happens is when JavaScript sees that 0 in front of the 9, it thinks that this is an octal-based numbering system, or that's what we're using. An octal is counting by 8s. So it's not like our decimal system, which counts by 10, and consequently the numbering is all off. So every time you use parse int, you have to use the added parameter to tell JavaScript, yes, we're doing decimal numbers. So even if you have a 0 in front of your string, it's still going to treat it as a decimal. And the way you do that is use parse int. You add in the string that you're using. In this case, we put 09, notice the double quotes, and then add a second parameter, comma 10, to tell JavaScript we want to do this in decimal. Now, here's more talk about the assignment operator. There's two things in JavaScript. One is the equal equal, and then there's the equal sign. You can think of the equal equal as comparing two things. And here you see where I have the balance beam, where we're seeing, do these things balance? Are they equal? So that's the equality operator. The other operator, and the one that you're going to use the most often, is the assignment operator. And you should imagine that as a gigantic, huge arrow that's pointing from the right side to the left side. Now here's how you use these. If we're doing an if statement, we might say, does the value that's inside the bucket or the variable f name, is that the same as quote Peter close quote? And in that case, we'd use the equality operator, which is the equal equal. Now, if we want to put something in that bucket or in that variable name, we'd use the assignment operator. And in this example, we put the string Peter into the variable name fname. Now, if we go back up and if we said if fname equals Peter, what's going to happen? JavaScript's going to say, oh, that's the assignment operator, and it's going to take the value of Peter, put it in fname, and it's always going to be true. So you'll never have a true false, you'll never be able to make a decision. It'll be true forever. So you have to remember when you're making a decision, you're going to use the equal equal or equality operator. And when you want to assign something, then you're going to use the single equal sign or the assignment operator. Here's a few other operators that are a lot of fun in JavaScript and make your life a lot easier. These are also available in the Java language, C#, C+, all other, most modern languages use these operators. First of all, there's the increment operator, and that's plus plus. So if we have a variable named myNumber, if we put a plus plus after it, it will automatically increment. We can also do a plus plus in front of it, and that will do the increment or go to the next number before the process is run. So if we're adding like my number to another number and we have the plus plus in the front, it's going to increase my number one higher before it does the addition or the subtraction. And just like there's a plus plus, there's also a minus minus, and that decrements. So in this example, we can see my number is reduced by one value. And this is one of my favorites, the plus equals. And this is a shorthand way of writing out my num equals my num plus 6. All you have to do is say my num plus equals 6. You can see it really shorten things up because you don't have to keep repeating that variable name. So again, the plus equal is the same thing as saying my num plus 6 is assigned to my num. Now, pause this presentation by clicking on the double lines and stop and do the lab variable, and you'll be able to experiment with some of these things that we've talked about. When you're done with that lab, then start up the presentation and I'll give you some more tips and tricks. JavaScript has lots and lots of functions built into it. One of the best references for that is out on the W3C Schools site, and that's listed at w3schools.com/js for JavaScript, and then /js_reference.asp. And if you go out to that website now, go ahead and pause this presentation, you'll see all the list of the built-in functions that come with JavaScript. This makes your life much, much easier because you don't have to write code to do all these things. You also might want to set this web page up as a bookmark on your computer. You can either save it as bookmarks, you can save it in your Delicious account, or you can grab the icon on the address bar of your web page and drag it down either to your Start button on XP or Vista, or drag it out to your desktop or some other place. And every time you click on that shortcut, it'll open up a browser and go out to this page at W3C Schools. So here's some of the things I've covered in this presentation. You should know the difference between declaring a variable and initializing it. And even though we do these on the same line, normally, you need to know the difference because sometimes they're separated out. You should be able to list 2 or 3 of the data types that JavaScript uses. Specifically, know that a string has double quotes around it and a number doesn't. You should know how to convert a string into an integer or a floating number, and you should know exactly what to do to keep that gotcha from happening and having JavaScript using the octal instead of the decimal. As soon as you see the letters NaN, you should know in your mind what that stands for. And if you need to find the length of a string, you should know how to do that in JavaScript as well. So that concludes this presentation of tips and tricks with variables with JavaScript.